What's up? We are back today on the Lotus Elise, and we're going to do a little project that is actually kind of a common problem on these cars as they get a little bit older. All right, so if you've got a Lotus Elise that is pushing 15 years old, chances are the rubber seals on these two fuse blocks here have gone bad and have either started to deteriorate like this one, or might even be completely gone. One of mine was completely missing already, and that just leaves the wires exposed. And I don't know a lot about electrical systems in cars, but I know that you do not want water getting on your wires. So that's why these boots exist. Now the problem with the design of this boot is that obviously you can't fit it around the whole electrical block. To get the wires in the bottom here, wires go in here, and then this goes around the base of the block. In order to do that, you need to unpin all the fuses in there and run the wires one by one through a replacement boot. But I'm going to show you an easier way to do that today. Okay, so let me show you what I'm talking about here. You can see these two fuse blocks right here. There's two of them against the firewall. The one on my left here still has the rubber boot mostly intact. You can see it down at the bottom there. The one on the right, though, you can see the boot is partially disintegrated and the wires are exposed. So we want to fix that. I was just going to fix the one on the right, but I might just go ahead and do them both. So one thing about this project is that these rubber boots seem to be kind of hard to find. I think I tracked it down though, and it appears to be a BMW motorcycle part number. So I'll put the link in the video description. But I'm actually not going to do that. I'm not going to use the BMW part because I think even with that, you have to either trace the wire and get it unplugged at the other end, or you have to unpin all the fuses inside this block, because obviously the block cannot fit through the tiny little end here, and that's not going to work. So what we're going to use instead is we're going to use some 2-inch heat shrink tube and try to make that work. Now there's a little clip on the sides of these here that if you squeeze that in and pull, you should be able to get the fuse block off of the little bracket on the side. Okay, there you go. It is off of that bracket. There is a zip tie. There's a zip tie kind of holding it in down at the bottom there. And I think I'm going to release that. All right, so here's a slightly better view. You can see the one that is all disintegrated and all the wires are showing here on this one. And then you can see the one that is roughly still intact down here. And even the solution from Lotus is just this boot with a zip tie around it. And I'm going to basically do the same thing with the heat shrink. So I think it'll work out okay. But first I need to get this one off over here. Finish getting the rest of this boot off. All right, so before I get too far along here, let me show you the heat shrink tubing that I got. I'll put a link to the heat shrink tubing in the video description so you can get some of this if you want. But it is essentially 2-inch 3-to-1 ratio heat shrink tubing, and I just got a 4-foot roll. Hopefully this will be big enough to get around the fuse block, and then we can heat it up. Okay, so then you want to take your piece of heat shrink tubing and put it on over the fuse block. And this is probably about the size that you need. And you don't want to cover up the clip on the side because you're going to need that to actually go in. All right, the next step, you're going to need a heat gun or a hair dryer, something like this. And you're going to heat shrink that down to the right size, and then we're going to zip tie the bottom of it. So then we're just going to use a zip tie here, bigger zip tie, to zip tie the bottom of it a little bit more securely. And there we go. You can see, actually not a bad solution. All right, so there you go. You can get a pretty good look at how that turned out. It's not too bad. I think on the next one, what I'm gonna do is actually cut away a little bit of the heat shrink at the bottom so that I can use that zip tie to pull it a little bit tighter and let it overlap on itself a little bit more. So even though this one still has the boot on it, it's extremely brittle and in bad shape. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace this one too. I would say that looks pretty good there. Definitely should be waterproof. Most of the water is going to be coming down from the top anyway. All right, there you go. You can see, replace the two boots with the heat shrink tubing, and that should be able to keep the water out in case anything gets in. It's very unlikely water is going to come up from the bottom anyway, because there is an under tray under the car. But it's possible that water might come through the vents if you're driving in the rain or when you're washing the car. So downward is more of the concern. All right, there you go. Not quite as easy as I thought it would be, mainly because of the positioning and trying to get to these in here. It's really kind of awkward to lean over the car the whole time and try to get back in here and do everything almost blind. But it turned out pretty good, and I am happy with the results. This should keep the water out.